Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great.
You got a pink flamingo shirt on. You're ready to rock and roll. Where are you going?
I'm going to Florida.
Why are you going to Florida?
First time I've ever been to Florida, just for the weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, why Florida for the weekend? Because normally you go down there, you go to Disneyland, Epcot Center.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We are soccer fanatics at my house.
Enthusiasts.
Yeah, for sure. And so my son Jake graduated from high school almost 2 years ago, but it was COVID, and I wanted to take him to do something fun, but COVID kind of got in the way. And he's a huge Arsenal soccer fan. The English soccer club, Arsenal, and Chelsea, another soccer club from London, are playing in the Summer League, which is sort of, it's a cup. It's kind of a minor deal, but they usually come and play in the United States. So we're going to get up tomorrow, fly out there, watch them play on Saturday, just nerd out about soccer all day, and then come home on Sunday.
The only thing I know about soccer I learned from Ted Lasso.
Yeah, well, that's a good place to learn it.
You know what?
I love that show.
That guy is the eternal optimist.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
If you want a character in a movie to see what a real optimist is like, he's a perfect example.
And the thing is that it doesn't always go his way, but he finds the silver lining, turns how to spin it, and you can see that even an optimist has bad days.
Yeah, actually that's a great example of optimism doesn't mean things are always going to be perfect, but when things aren't going well, you find a way around them or through them or over them.
Yeah, and so I really love Ted Lasso.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
If you haven't seen it yet, go give it a shot. It's on Apple TV, I believe.
I think so. I think there's even a new season coming out.
I like it. Hey, speaking of, new seasons and shows, and I was thinking about this on the drive down. Everybody's got a story. And, when you think about it, and, a lot of times people come on here and they tell their stories. And usually with the stories on a podcast about recovery, there's a lot of fireworks. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of trauma. And there's a lot of...
Well, we talk about people's rock bottoms a lot. And you and I have sort of... mused over the fact that we'll sit and look at each other and think, well, that must be the rock bottom, and then their story keeps going and there's another rock bottom, and so there's a lot of like you said, drama that happens usually.
And we live in a salacious society, and when I say that, I mean that we like a train wreck. We like to see things go boom.
Well, what was the TV show Intervention? I think that's all that show was pretty much about, unfortunately, was just people tuned in to see the train wreck. And
it's funny you bring up the show Intervention, because our guest today's name is Shay, and we're going to talk to her in just a second, but she watches that show with her 10-year-old daughter. Now, Shay's been sober for 2 years, and I told her I used to watch that show like I was doing homework in case my family was ever going to pull an intervention on me, and I was like,
If there are a lot of cars outside my house when I get home late at night, what do I do?
Why am I meeting you in this motel in the banquet room at 10 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday?
Right.
No, I know what's going on behind those doors, and I'm not going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But I used to watch that, and I used to watch the beginning, and I used to watch the end. And I never watched the middle, because that's when it got too real. And I was talking with our guest, and she goes, because you could relate, huh? And I was like, yeah, kind of.
Too raw.
I mean, I could see the addict in their active addiction and just see what a nightmare and a mess that situation they're in. But I also could see the hurt in the loved one's eyes. And that more than...
That was probably too much, right?
It was, because I could see that they just wanted the best for this person. And they wanted to help in any way they can. And they had tried everything they had. And so they came to this intervention.
Yeah.
And so I would watch the beginning, I would skip the middle, and I'd watch the end. And I'd watch the end where they would finally, almost 90% of the time, talk this person into going to rehab. And then the credits would roll. And then about 30 seconds into the credit, they would pull up a black screen, and they would tell you where that person is currently doing it. Like, he spent 15 days in rehab, is now back using. Or this person has been sober for 2 years. And it was very disheartening to see that all that they went through, that this person would relapse, within 10 days.
That happens a lot on that. Yeah.
And now being in recovery for 4 years plus, I know that relapse is part of the game. But what I wanted to kind of talk about is there's a lot of people out there who are battling addiction, who aren't getting DUIs, who aren't losing their jobs, who aren't losing their families, but are still battling the same disease of addiction. And it's just not without all the fanfare.
Well, sometimes the term functional gets thrown around, and you and I aren't real big fans of that.
No.
But I think that's what people mean when they say they're sort of functioning, meaning they're they haven't had, all these crazy experiences, but every day's a battle. Every day is kind of misery.
And addiction is probably one of the most lonely diseases out there.
Yeah.
And the fact that you isolate yourself from your loved ones because you don't want to hear the pain in their voice. You don't want to see the disappointment in their eyes. And you want to be in complete denial that you don't have a problem. So if nobody can tell you what a train wreck you are, you must not be a train wreck. So you can put it together for 4 to 8 hours, depending on what your job is, and then come back and bury yourself into whatever you're into. Mm-hmm. And so, but what I'm saying is that I know there's a lot of people, and I know because they reach out to me on Instagram and Facebook who say, because of this podcast, I've reevaluated my life and I've looked deeper and realized that I was in an active addiction. Now, it wasn't as bad as yours. I didn't have my mugshot all over TV and websites and all that. People weren't talking about it for a while, but I was an addict. And so I wanted people to know that are out there that are listening to this, because people go, who listens to your podcast? I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's a lot of people in active addiction. I don't think somebody is shooting heroin and listening to our podcast. There might be some, but I don't think so.
Yeah. But people in their worst addiction state are probably not listening to this. But I think it's a lot like what you were doing with Intervention, the TV show. It's sort of people who are contemplating, or they're in pre-contemplation or contemplation. We've talked about those stages of behavior change.
Yeah.
People who are sort of like thinking, do I have a problem? Should I change things? And a huge percentage of our audience happen to be friends and loved ones of people who are in active addiction. Just
trying to figure out how to deal with the situation that they've been put into.
Right.
Because we found out that addiction is a family disease. I used to tell my parents, my ex-wife, my kids all the time, I was like, what do you care? I'm not making you drink.
It's not your problem.
It's not your problem. And to be a fact, it's not even a problem for me. The problem is yours. You're the problem. Yeah. Just let me be me. And now I know how selfish that was, and what a problem it was for my ex-wife, for my parents, for my family, for my work, for everybody who's associated with me, because I was a hurricane. I was a tornado. I was a wrecking ball. I was a one-man wrecking ball, and I did a lot of damage.
Yeah, and I think you could look at that two ways, right? Obviously, the way you're looking at it right now is the damage that gets done. A different way to spin it, if you're somebody who's in that state right now, might be, I have such great connections with people that when I am a wrecking ball, I hurt them. That's how close they are to me. I'm that close with people. I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed, however you want to think of it, to have those deep connections in my life. I should take better care of them.
Yeah.
Right? So if you flip it around the other way, now all of a sudden you're motivated to take care of those relationships instead of being resentful that people are hurt by your behavior.
I've said it a ton that I was very blessed with good family and friends and coworkers who cheered me on and championed me to become the better version of myself.
And that's a talent for you. You got to go do some fun stuff with some friends of mine earlier this week where you played in a golf tournament, and I've gotten twice feedback now from them just in a few days about how much they loved meeting you and spending time with you and had fun with you. And that's Casey Scott. Like everywhere you go, you make great connections with people.
Well, and I had a blast, and I was honored to be a part of it, and I hope they have me back next year. But there are a lot of people out there that are battling this disease in isolation and alone. And for those people, let us be your family. You reach out to us on Facebook. Reach us out on Instagram. If we can point you in the right direction, if we can give you advice, if we can be the only voice that you hear today that you matter, that you count, and that you can beat this, that recovery is possible, let us be that tool for you.
And one thing you can do if you're wondering about different programs and places to go, we've been able to highlight a lot of great places on this show, a lot of different types of recovery programs, and people come in and talk about their experience with them, or some of, recently we've had people come on who run different recovery programs. So this can be a resource if you're wondering what would that program be like. Chances are we've had somebody from that program on this show.
But maybe you listened to the podcast the way I watched Intervention, and you watch it in pieces. So I'm going to just tell you how it is. I'll give you the breakdown, and this is about as much planning we do for each show. Dr. Matt and myself, we talk for 10 minutes. We take a break. We introduce you to the guest. We go through their story. And at the very end of every podcast, we like to highlight what that person is doing in recovery, whether it be Instagram page, working at a recovery center, a therapist, or whatever they're doing
different things
to give back. So if anything, go back and listen to our past guests and fast forward it to the very end. I'd love it if you listen to the whole thing, but go back and listen to the last 10 minutes of every episode and find out what those people did to get themselves into recovery and how they're giving back.
Yeah, I think that's why I usually leave here in a really good mood.
Yeah.
Because we end on the positives.
This show is like a shot of vitamin B12.
Yeah. Right in the glute.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it.
I love it too, man.
You've got a challenge for everybody out there.
So I was thinking about this the other day. It's like maybe Dr. Matt needs to bring something better and more and new to the show.
I don't know how you could bring better, more, or new to the show.
Well, we're going to try it right now, okay? You can let me know.
Yeah.
I was thinking we have such a great social media. It's mostly Facebook, but we have a lot of people that like to interact with us on social media. They're obviously listening to the show. And so I thought, you know what? Sometimes we just need a challenge in life. Sometimes we just need somebody to challenge us to make a change, to read a book, whatever it happens to be.
Sure.
And
eat healthier,
whatever it is. And that just somebody who cares giving us a challenge. Sometimes we take it up. And I like to think, so I do a lot of what's called cognitive behavioral therapy in my practice. CBT, yes. And CBT is a type of therapy that's based in training or retraining. It's very active. It's sort of like going to the gym. I use that analogy a lot. And so I like to, instead of telling people, do this thing for the rest of your life, which is an overwhelming thing to hear, I like to just give people challenges. I usually call them experiments and say, between now and our next visit, why don't you try this? Practice it every day or twice a day or whatever it is. Come back, give me feedback. If it doesn't work, we won't keep doing it, obviously. If it does work or only works partially, we'll tweak it and adapt it, and it might become a new healthy part of your life. So that's the challenge. We're going to start giving periodic challenges here on the show.
I love it.
Just simple things that a person could try between now and their next visit with us. And they can message us on Facebook and let us know how it went. So today's challenge is this.
Right.
If you are somebody who is just a sort of a casual social drinker, okay, let's say we
call them normies.
Normies, yes, the normies. Somebody who might just show up to a party or to a dinner and have a drink with their friends. I'm going to challenge you to exercise a little extra control, and the next time you're out and you're in a situation where you might have a social drink, turn it down and have water instead. And pay attention to what that experience is like. Is it different? Is it the same? Is it worse? Is it better? Like having dinner, going out, being with friends. We have a extended weekend coming up, the holiday weekend, that kind of, well, it'll be past by the time people hear this, but barbecues, family events, whatever it happens to be. And if that's a time you normally grab a drink of some kind, turn it down and have some water. Don't have soda. That's horrible for you. But have some water, something like that. And then, you know what? I'd love to hear your feedback. I think other people would love to hear your feedback on what that was like. Was it sort of like, or was it interesting to you?
I'm going to add a little something to that.
Okay.
Let me know what people's responses were when you turned down a drink. Yeah. I want to see what that is. Because I know in my own experience, if people would be like, hey, do you want a drink? I'm going to be like, no, I'm good. They're like, why? What's wrong with you?
You okay?
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Let's hear
very
what
uncharacteristic.
Like if you show up to your friend night, dinner night, going out, and you turn down the wine or whatever, it'd be interesting to hear what people say.
I love it. Hey, well, so do what Dr. Matt said. Added a comment on Facebook. We'll put a post up there so we know you know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Our guest today is Shay Mitchell. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Shay Mitchell is your sober name.
Yes, Shay Sober. Yep.
Yeah, Shay Sober. And your alcoholic name was?
Hip hip Sheree.
which I love, and we're going to find out more about that. You're listening to Project Recovery right here on KSL. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. Our guest today is Shay Mitchell. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm so excited that you're here because I found out about Shay from your Instagram. You celebrate sobriety and you do some wonderful things on there. The thing I love about your Instagram the most is how raw and real you are. You don't pull punches.
Thanks.
And now, was that on purpose? Does that help you in your recovery?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
You know, it does because once I got honest about being an alcoholic, I decided I wanted to be honest about everything because that's what feels good now.
You were telling me that you've been married for how many years now?
Oh my gosh, been married for, it'll be 13 years this November.
And you said your husband now watches your Instagram and learns things about your addiction that in 13 years of marriage he didn't know.
Right. I hid a lot of stuff while I was drinking. How much I was drinking, when I was drinking, all of it.
And we're going to get to all that in just a second. Where does the story of Shay begin?
All right. Well, born and raised in Utah. I'm the oldest of four. Born into the culture, the Mormon culture, so raised in, the conservative religious household. We went to church every Sunday, and what was kind of weird for me about that was I also grew up with an addict father. So my father was addicted to all sorts of things, but also preached, don't do that, a little bit more of do as I say, not as I do. So we would go to church on Sundays, be taught, word of wisdom, not to drink alcohol, those kinds of things. But then I would see him and my mom do that on the weekends, throw poker parties, have tequila out, have fun doing that. So that was confusing for me as a young child because I saw them having fun doing that and not really having that much fun when they were at church. You just kind of have this observation as a kid, like what looks enjoyable. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to drink from a really young age, seeing that. My mom stopped drinking when I was about 11 just by choice. She didn't really have an addiction to alcohol like I do, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a little bit a part of my story.
I'm going to stop you there for a second. Dr. Matt, how confusing is that?
Oh, my gosh.
For a young child.
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting over here just saying there's so much I could say about that.
Well, I want you to say something.
Well, I'm curious to get back to your experience with this, but the reality is, like, as a child, you don't have your own real internal voice. This is the way I kind of like to say it. We learn our internal voice from the external voices around us. So growing up, our parents are usually the most influential people. And so when your parents say something, you take it very seriously. And, you may change your mind about it, probably do later on when you grow up. But when you're a kid, under teen, the preteen years, all of that, everything mom and dad says and does really is on your mind. So when parents do really, let's just say it, hypocritical things, confusing things, it does leave a child very, very confused and you're very influenced by things that look like they're fun. So when you were mentioning being at church, I remember seeing a meme once about somebody staring at a wall, and that's what it's like for a kid at church because they're so small and they're just sitting there and their feet don't touch the ground and they're staring. It can be a very stifling time. I remember not wanting to wear my tie and socks and all that kind of stuff, right? And so church didn't sound fun, but mom and dad are throwing these fun parties, which part of the fun is alcohol, which we were taught we shouldn't do at church. So that's very confusing for a kid. My question is, did you ever bring that up? Did you ever mention, because sometimes kids are, when you get a little bit older, you're like, oh, I don't want to put dad on the spot and, make him upset. But when you're a kid, you're just kind of like, hey, what's up with this? Did you ever bring it up? Did you ever talk to your parents about it, ask about it?
I didn't. I grew up in a household, like I said, where it was do as I say, not as I do. And that was actually said, do as I say, not as I do. Don't ask questions. I've told you to do this, so do what I say.
They shut that down.
Yeah,
there wasn't
so I just
a conversation.
I didn't feel safe maybe to ask without thinking I might be yelled at or asked, why am I even asking? It's none of my business, maybe, is how I felt. I was just really always observant.
But that's a problem that I have with the alcohol, the movies, the TVs, and all of that. You know what I mean? Because you watch alcohol ads, you watch alcohol play
remember
part.
like Budweiser commercials from the 80s,
Yeah,
90s.
yeah, and TV
Everybody's
and all that
having
stuff.
a great
and
time.
everybody's having a good time.
Yep.
And when we're talking to our kids, it's bad. It's bad. But on this other hand, everybody's showing what fun it is. And nobody's telling these kids, hey, look, alcohol does make things fun. It does.
For a minute.
For a minute.
Mm-hmm.
It does lower
It'd be good
inhibitions.
if they showed the end of the party in the commercial.
But, they don't ever really do that.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is, and so I think a lot of times when kids are in their curiosity stage, and junior high, high school, and they want to know what it is, and their whole life they've been told this is horrible, this is bad, don't do that, and the first time they try it, and we've had people on the podcast say that they go, it wasn't bad. It wasn't horrible. As a matter of fact, it was the exact opposite. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And so then they go, what else have you been lying to me about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, and so if we don't have these honest, genuine conversations with the kids, rather than doing what Shay's parents did, just no, because I said so.
Well, I also think about your parents. I mean, that's a lot of stuff going on for mom and dad. Like if they must have felt some internal distress about, like, on the one hand, I want to be a person who can cut loose and have a party and drink and all that. By the way, gambling's, you're not supposed to do that one either. So we got the tequila, we got the poker out, we got all that stuff. On the other hand, they must have felt some sort of drive or obligation to do the church part and take you guys as kids to church. Do you feel like that was some internal stress for your parents?
As a parent now and looking back, I can absolutely see that. They were raised a certain way, and so you only know what you know. And so they were just handing that down to us kids because it seemed, that seemed to work for them. But also in their lives, they had, needs to let loose, and that's the alcohol worked for them for that.
And sometimes we talk about, I talk about a lot with people, is authenticity. Mm-hmm. Like if you really process yourself, if you really think about, why do I do what I do? Why do I like what I like? Who am I? Who am I becoming? Am I authentic? Am I being real with myself, and therefore can allow myself to be real with others? That's sort of a lifelong pursuit. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we find there are certain things we get tripped up on that we're having a hard time looking at. We really aren't authentic on, and that can cause a lot of distress inside. And I'm guessing, and we see it here in Utah, and I think a lot of religious communities around the world have the similar thing where a person's not fully well adjusted on a belief system, and so they feel caught in between. And that in and of itself can cause enough stress to have a person want to escape with substances.
Yeah, I say that religious trauma is part of my story because of, that confusion. And I left the church in high school, and then my parents and siblings all got sealed together in the temple. And we know what that means in the temple, that they're together and I'm not.
For listeners, a temple sealing is sort of like when a couple get married or when a family gets sealed. The LDS belief is that you'll be together for eternity. Mm-hmm. And minus Shay, apparently.
Yeah. So when they chose to do that without me, that was
tell me about that.
Very traumatic. I didn't even realize how traumatic it was until I went to rehab in 2010.
Because you just buried it.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, they're going to do that, and I don't believe in the religion anymore anyway, so whatever, go do that thing.
So
but what really affected me was that they believed in the religion still, and that they still did that and were willing to go on with that process without me.
Without you.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, because that is such a core belief of the Mormon Church, is that we live past this life and that we can follow certain rules and have certain ceremonies done to where we're all together forever as a family. If people know anything about Mormons, one thing they usually know is family. That's the big focus. Backing up just a tad, you said when you were 11, Mom stopped drinking. Mm-hmm. Did all of the drinking culture stop in your household at some point prior to them all going to the temple together?
So the temple happened a bit later, after I was graduated, or at the end of high school for me. But yeah, backing up a little bit, when I was around 11, I had something traumatic happen to me. I was sexually assaulted by a neighbor. I held that in for a while. I did eventually tell my parents. They did handle it. That man went to jail. And But, back in the day, they didn't really know how to handle the after effects of that. So I probably talked to someone one time, and then it was kind of like, let's just not talk about it. We've done what we can, and we're going to move on.
I think a lot of times, and this is no fault to parents, I think, if anything, mental health, we need to do a better job of educating people on what to do. But I think we overemphasize the punishment part. Like, okay, this person's going to get caught. It's against the law. They're going to have a punishment, go to jail, whatever. And now we should all feel better. But the reality is that it's not that simple, is it?
Right. And so I buried that. I thought if they're telling me to just that we can move on now, I guess I believe them. They're my parents. Same with all sorts of things. So I didn't drink through high school. The rebels wouldn't have me. I wanted to be with the rebels, but they wouldn't have me.
Why do you think they didn't want you? You were hip Sheree.
But in high school,
yet.
I wasn't. I wasn't yet. I was shy girl in the corner. Growing up in this religion, I still was just kind of, I wasn't sure who I was. I wanted the fun, but I didn't. I'm not quite sure. But I'm actually very fortunate, and I'm grateful to the friends that I have in high school that they didn't drink. I think it might have saved my life, because if I had gone down the addiction path, that might have been a harder path for me. I don't know. I can't really say.
Well,
but
your brain thanks you if you want to look at it from a brain development standpoint.
Because your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 24 or 25. That's what he's talking about.
Exactly.
Right?
And so the closer you can get to your mid-20s before you start drinking or using other drugs, your brain thanks you.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
So
Right.
when did the first drink begin for hip Sheree?
Yeah, so what happened was I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. I needed to get out of my toxic home. My dad's addiction had, spiraled from age about 12 on. And I had experienced a lot of parentification. My mom was handling my dad, and so I was kind of the mom handling my younger siblings. So I just wanted to get out. I just wanted to get out however that was going to happen, and that was marriage for me, a young marriage at 19. And as soon as I got out, we started drinking right away, me and my young husband.
And he was your high school sweetheart. Did he
Yes.
drink during high school also? Was he?
Nope, we
a
didn't.
partier?
But it was something that we discussed. We just kind of knew
Yeah, I
we
was
needed to
gonna
be
say, how
out
did
from
that
under
happen?
our parents' roofs to do it, because we were
We're
rule
grown-ups
followers,
now.
But then once we were married, it was like, I
We
pay
get
for
to
my
set the
own
rules.
bills. I can.
So I'm curious,
do what I
who was the
want.
first one that brought it up? Do you remember?
Goodness.
Like how'd
Probably
that,
me,
how'd
because
that get brought
it's
up?
always been something that I wanted
You
to
were
do.
curious about it, huh?
Yeah. And that first sip, I could honestly say from the very first sip that I was like, this is it.
What was
This
your first
is
sip of?
It for me. Jaeger and Kool-Aid. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, right?
Wow.
And that was the jam forever.
Jaeger and Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Huh.
I love it. That is
No one should love it. Those are two flavors that should not be married.
I
That
think-
is absolutely. What color Kool-Aid?
Like red, usually.
wow.
I know. It's so bad. Like thinking of that, it turns my stomach.
And so you say after the first sip.
Addiction has made people do some bad things before, but that might
Yeah.
be right up there.
Right? So after the first sip, you knew that was your jam.
I felt a freedom that I had never felt. Like I had been let loose. Like I didn't care what people thought of me anymore. All through school, it was very much about what people thought about me, including my family. And I just didn't care. And
Self-conscious,
like I could finally be
anxious.
outgoing, and I could
Yeah.
finally be with the popular crowd and the life of the party. Yeah.
Well, Hip Sheree just found freedom, or as we're going to call her now, the Kool-Aid Kid. We're going to find out how her life goes on. You're listening to Project Recovery right here on KSL. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. Casey Scott here, Dr. Matt Woolley, as always, and our guest today is Shay Mitchell. How are you?
So good.
So you just talked about your first drink, which was Jägermeister and Kool-Aid.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah.
Yum.
Yeah. That good old classic, Jägermeister and Kool-Aid. But you said you had such a freeing feeling for the first time. You didn't care what people thought about you. You were living under your own roof, paying your own bills, feeling like a grown-up at the age of 19.
That's right. I was free.
So,
So I
but
thought.
we've had a lot of people from a psychologist's point of view. I think you probably just had a higher level of anxiety than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anxiety that runs in your family? Like members of your family have different kinds of anxiety?
Absolutely. I've been diagnosed with anxiety disorder. My dad has anxieties. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what a lot of people don't understand is that anxiety often is sort of the tendency towards it is biologically inherited. And so it runs in families. And people who kind of grow up feeling extra anxious, extra self-conscious, socially, uncomfortable, don't really know what it's like. They kind of feel like a kid looking from the outside in through a window socially. And then when they smoke a joint, or then when they have a drink, and that goes, or take a pain pill, that goes away. It's a feeling that you just want to have back immediately, right?
It is. It was, if I'm being honest with myself today, I liked it a little too much from the very beginning.
Well, the relief from that anxiety, people don't understand unless you've had anxiety. It is miserable and pervasive. And when you can get some relief from that, I totally get why people want to chase that feeling again, getting rid of their anxiety.
How was your husband's first interaction with alcohol?
So that my first husband in that young marriage was not the same as mine. He kind of just handled it like any college age kid would. Mm-hmm. And over that 2 years, for me, what would happen is I would get really crazy by the end of the night, like start out fine. And then past trauma would come up and I would just get really mean. I would get, I would cry, like hyperventilate, not really understand what was going on. And a lot of this was some of that past trauma from my childhood popping up, and he didn't know what to do with me.
Emotional lability.
Okay.
All over the place.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Explain that, because I don't think we know what that means.
Well, when your inhibitions are all gone and you have a lot of trauma from your past, your emotions can just sort of go.
It's a free-for-all.
And your thoughts and your emotions sort of trigger each other. And so you can be happy, and then you can be really sad, and then you can be scared, then you can be angry. And so that's a common experience for people that have a lot of unpacked trauma and issues from their past. When they start to drink, they become labile, or their emotions go all over the place.
So you started down the road of partying.
Mm-hmm.
Does it escalate quick, or do you do it kind of just on the weekend, sporadic, special occasions?
Yeah, being married, we still had to be responsible, pay our bills and stuff. So it was pretty much weekends. Got a little bit more, just kind of all over the place. But because I got so crazy, that marriage ended pretty quickly after about 2 years. Mm-hmm. He just really didn't know what to do with me. So I moved back home, and that really amplified my drinking, because also divorce in my culture and our culture, how I was raised, was shameful. So I used alcohol to cope in that way as well.
So now are you drinking at home with your parents?
Yeah. So when I moved home, I laid down the law, man. I was like, if I'm going to move back home with you guys, you can't tell me what to do. And they're like, okay, whatever.
You're laughing because it sounds silly,
it sounds silly,
when you move in with somebody, usually you don't get to dictate the terms.
But
you have the privilege of having me in your home.
Yeah, exactly. And they were kind of like, okay, Shay, but they're like, okay, pay us $100 a month and you can not have a curfew or whatever,
Uh-huh.
So I did that, and I had a little mini fridge in my basement bedroom and had all my liquor in there, and I got a waitressing job, which was very pervasive for alcohol addiction.
Restaurants are a great place to go.
Sleep all day, work all night, then party, then sleep all day cycle, for years. But actually not years for me. I met my next husband pretty quickly, my current husband that I'm still married to. I actually met him a week after my divorce at the bottom of some stairs at a house party. So I didn't meet him, he met me. Picked me up from the bottom of those stairs.
He met Hip Hip Sheree.
He met Hip Hip Sheree. In fact, he said, you introduced yourself to everyone at the party except for me. And I was like, I'm going to marry that girl. I was like, what? And he did. But he did not know the depths of my addiction. So I was really able to hide that from him in the beginning, even though that's how he met me. We did normal dates after that.
So was that a conscious decision? Were you like, I kind of like this guy, so I want to dial it back so he doesn't quite see the crazy side of my drinking?
Yeah, and that was like that for me with everyone. I hid it even from myself, I think, pretty well. I was really in denial about how much I was drinking. I just thought, I just need to feel good. I just need to feel like I can function. Like I can talk to people. Like I can.
But it
do
was
anything.
a daily thing at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's interesting that you say I just need to feel good, because I know in my active addiction, I mean, that was the benchmark I was trying to hit on a daily basis. Now, as my girlfriend would say, she's like, oh, you overshot your window big time last night. You know what I mean? And it seemed like I overshot the window quite a bit. But if I'm going to be honest with you, me going into a day was just trying to get to that good spot. It was never to be obliviated. It was never to be stumbling. It was never to be kind of slurry. You know what I mean? It was just to be good. But I was a horrible aim.
Well, you're competitive too.
Yeah.
So you always wanted to do more, right?
But when she said that, I get what you're saying. And then every once in a while, Hip Hip Sheree would show up, and then you'd have to explain it to your fiance or your husband and go like, yeah, I don't know what happened. And how many
Blackouts
times-
happen more and more as time goes on, and you don't really remember, and you have to ask. And then I just stopped asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it becomes to be an embarrassment for you and the person you're with. You know, and it's just like, yep, it was one of those episodes, and it's a horrible feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I thought I was hiding it pretty well, but I obviously wasn't. I mean, I was hiding it from him, but my family did know me better, you know? And so eventually I married my husband, and about a year into our marriage, my sister, who was maybe 13 or so at the time, wrote me a letter. And she's like, I'm worried about you. Like, you have a problem. And so I got called out for the first time. Like, okay, I'm not hiding it as well as I thought I was. People see that there's something
What was your
going on.
reaction to your little sister sending you a letter? Like, that's pretty direct of her.
It was really direct of her. She also grew up with our dad, so she knew, kind of some of addiction, how that looked and stuff.
Can I ask you a honest question?
Yeah.
Do you think it was your 13-year-old sister's idea, or do you think somebody gave it to her?
I think it was her idea. I think she's wise beyond her years.
And that even makes it so much more powerful.
Right. Yeah.
And
So if you're a 13-year-old out there and you are thinking you might need to write a letter to someone, might just be the eye-opener they need.
my daughter wrote a letter, and I mean, it'll be forever a gift to me. And it was the most honest, real outlook of my alcoholic life. And so when she read that letter read that letter, what did it do to you inside?
It crushed me, and then I told my husband, I said, I guess I think I need to go to rehab. We aren't even married a year. We spent our 1-year anniversary on my break from rehab. So,
Wow.
yeah, I went to rehab, an inpatient rehab for 90 days. Told him, he was like, okay, we figured it out. But I wasn't there yet. I mean, I was saying I was an alcoholic because I was in rehab, and that's what they asked you to do. And I was just going to go to this rehab and learn how to drink better. That's what was in my idea. That was my plan.
You were going to get the rules.
I'm not sure which rehab that is. The one that advertises, come here, we'll teach you to drink. Actually, it's funny that you bring that up, though, because we talk about, people, and, you have 2 years of sobriety. You have 4 years of sobriety. We talk about sobriety. The reality is there are, and it was a little more popular back in the day, there were programs that the attempt was to teach people to drink socially and to moderate and manage their drinking. Obviously, if a person needs a rehab, maybe that's not the best program for them. But I think that a lot of people, part of their denial is, I'm just going to learn how to drink. Like, I can get to that good spot. I'm not going to overshoot my mark anymore. And so it sounds like you went in there. Did that make you more or less open to the things they were doing at rehab?
I'm an achiever, like at heart. That's my motivation. I like to succeed at stuff. So if I'm going to go into a rehab, I'm going to graduate. Like, I'm going to succeed at it, and I graduated, and then I stayed sober to, prove to people, look, like, I can do this. I had a baby during that time. So I stayed sober for almost 2 years. And then it was like, look, you guys, I've proven it. I went through therapy. I graduated. I can drink now. And I think I convinced a lot of people that I could, because also when you go that long, if you're going to go back to it, you're going to make damn sure that you don't mess up for as long as possible, right? You want to be able to have your drink. You want to be able to have your substance. And so for a couple of years, I think I did okay. I managed, however that might look. I would have bouts of sobriety when someone would be like, hey, maybe you should cut back. I'll be like, oh, I can. And I would do it for 30 days. But then I had my second daughter. And I had some severe postpartum depression after her. I didn't really realize because I was also still drinking. I quit during that pregnancy, but started up again right after I had her because I was coping with that, and I didn't know I had it, and I was self-medicating with alcohol. And that made my mental health really, really spiral at that time after that. So in 2019, I was suicidal really bad, almost daily.
How long after was it your second pregnancy where you had the postpartum?
Yep.
So how long from delivery to suicidality was that?
So she was born in 2015. So she was about 4 when
She was
I
about
was
4.
Yep, and this was a spiral from then all the way down to that.
Had you ever heard of postpartum depression before?
Yeah, I had, but because I had been drinking for so long, I just thought that it was drinking depression, not postpartum.
The reason I
depression.
ask is because a lot of, there's more of a campaign now to help providers and women and families understand what postpartum depression is. And there are other postpartum problems. Even psychosis can be a postpartum issue as a woman's body is trying to adjust to everything that's happened during and after the delivery of a baby. But I think even as recently as 2015, the information wasn't readily available, and there weren't a lot of good treatment options. So I think that a lot of women maybe still today misunderstand what postpartum depression is and how serious it can be.
It's debilitating, and when you're a new mom, you just want to take care of your kid, and so you'll do anything you can, and alcohol got me out of bed. I would wake up and be like, okay, I can drink, I can have a shot. Like, how sad is that? But that was what was my motivator, because it was the only thing that gave me energy. It was the only thing getting me going.
How bad did the drinking get?
Bad. I was drinking, when it got to the suicidal ideations, I was drinking half a handle a day.
And you are probably
5 foot nothing.
Yeah.
Under 100 pounds. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's
It's scary.
It's a sad commentary on how much tolerance your body had built up.
Yeah, and
be
that was
able to
over
handle that.
4 years from that point, right? But yeah, one day I was passed out at noon, and my husband just didn't know what to do with me anymore. So he called my sister and said, I need to take her to the hospital. And she took me to the ER, and I told the nurses I wanted to die, and they 5150'd me. And off to the behavioral health unit I went for 72 hours.
And so for people who are Van Halen fans and don't know what 5150 means,
Right.
other than Sammy Hagar's first Van Halen album, that's where you've been deemed to be a danger to yourself or others, and therefore you're committed for a short period of time until you can be evaluated.
So
that's pretty serious, because that doesn't happen easily.
Right. So I went in there. They started medicating me.
Did they start detoxing you, or did they just try to medicate you just to, I don't know.
Both. Yeah, both. Get me stabilized, basically. By the end of the 72 hours, I was ready to be home. I was ready to be back in my bed. I was like, okay, like, I get it. It was bad. And I stayed sober for about 4 months. We made a move during that time, new environment change, right? Got through all the holidays, 2019 holidays. January 1st, New Year's 2020. I'm like, hey, this craziness
but that's
of
the
it.
addict brain, right?
That is the crazy of it.
We
Yeah.
lie to ourselves and convince ourselves that we can handle something that we
Even
can't
after
handle.
suicidal ideations, being admitted for 72 hours, again, I'm like, hey, let's try again, though.
I don't want to put your husband on the hot seat because he's not here. But what did your husband say?
With the drinking,
yes.
at this point, it's been so long for my poor husband, right? He doesn't know how to handle this. So he's like, if that's your choice, that's your choice.
I get the sense that she's got a lot of energy, and he might feel like that sometimes. Like, okay, right?
What am I gonna do? I can't stop you. Yeah, I'm very much.
You're like a little
I'm gonna
ball
make my
of
own
fire.
decisions, and
Yeah, so I can imagine he's sort of like in containment mode back in those days, kind of like, how do I handle
absolutely
this woman?
just trying to keep the fire from not getting too large.
He's just trying to contain you.
Yeah, and yeah.
So what happened? You said it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day?
Yeah, so
or?
New Year's Eve, drank, awesome, great time, whatever.
Was it though? Was it?
Well, I don't remember. I was blacking out so easily by this point. My tolerance, it's so weird how you think your tolerance is going to come back to you when you take a break for 4 months, and it doesn't.
No, that's why a lot of people end up overdosing.
Right.
Because they'll take 4 months off and they'll come back and they'll want the same fix that they used to get high with, and the body has not
the tolerance
acclimated
has
to
gone
it.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they end up overdosing.
Right. And so I drank how I drank before. You know, I tried not to, but the neural pathways in my brain already had that
Well established
coping mechanism down. It knew what to do with the alcohol. So COVID hit.
Right. I was going to say.
When the liquor stores we're talking about being shut down, since here in Utah we don't have liquor stores and grocery stores, I was a liquor drinker, not a beer drinker. And so I was fearful, and I had my husband go get me 40 bottles of rum, and those were gone real quick.
So that, you know,
30, yeah, wow.
like I'm looking back of all the crazy stuff that happened during COVID.
But that's one that happened where people started to panic, and all of a sudden there was a rush on the liquor stores here.
I didn't know there was a rush on liquor store. I knew we did a rush on toilet paper, but I don't remember the rush on liquor store. But that
lines around the liquor stores.
Yeah, people talked. Yeah,
and so your husband went in about 40 bottles of rum.
Yeah.
And they started eventually limiting, right? Like sort of like Costco, you can only get like one thing of toilet paper.
Can I ask you something? When you found out they were going to start limiting stuff, was the first thing you thought liquor?
Liquor. Because it's also dangerous to withdraw from liquor. Like, you actually can die. And I was at that physically addicted point.
Okay.
But this was so January to April, I guess, is
so
kind
fast,
of when.
Right? 4 months.
Did you just start drinking regularly again after that?
My 35th birthday was March 18th. And that was also the day that we had a big earthquake. And for some reason, from that day, it just kind of spiraled. And then the shutdown was like early April. And that, you know, from then on, I was just drinking daily just to cope with my kids were home. The pandemic, we were shut down. Everyone was drinking during the day too. So it was justification for me finally. Like, everyone else is
People
doing it.
on Zoom are using their coffee mugs, but filling it up with
everyone
liquor,
was joining me in what I'd always been doing.
You're like, finally, you're on the playbook.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you burned through 40 bottles pretty quick.
And during that month, I landed in the ER a couple times from severe hangovers in the height of COVID, when you don't want to be at the hospital, especially an ER situation. But when you're that sick, that's how it was.
Did those 40 bottles go in a month?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's more than a bottle a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening was I had a 3-day bender, May 3rd, 4th, 5th for Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Drinko is what I used to call it. And woke up sick as all get out on May 6th again. And I finally had this click. Like, holy crap, you are here. You have to go to the hospital again. Like, I can't. Someone else was like, I can't even believe you. Like, almost parenting me. Like, I cannot even believe that this has happened.
That was your internal voice?
And that was that was my acceptance. Like, okay, holy freaking crap, dude, I am an alcoholic. I admit it. Like, I'm yelling, like, I admit it. Fine. I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm an alcoholic. And I'd been seeing a therapist after the behavioral health unit situation. And I was just like, I'm going to get honest with her. And she specialized in substance abuse disorders. So that was really helpful. But yeah, I got honest with her, and I was just willing to do anything at that point.
So what did that consist of?
Oh my gosh, so much stuff. So I got on medication. I got on the Vivitrol shot for cravings.
For those who don't know, Vivitrol is a shot. You can take it in pill form or a shot. And what it does is it's once a month. And it lessens the cravings of alcohol. And so much to the fact that if you actually drink on it, you will get a little sick. And there's been people who have powered through the Vivitrol shot and still drank and got drunk. Yeah. But hopefully there's enough of a barrier resistance that it makes you rethink.
Vivitrol plus the right kind of support, it can really be helpful to people.
So I got with a psychologist and got on the right medication for anxiety, depression, anger,
those things,
sleep. I got on all of it. And I started talking to my therapist, honestly. I got into an IOP, intensive outpatient program, and I did that 3 hours a night, 3 nights a week for 4 months. So it was really good to be around those peers, have those assignments, really dive into the disorder and what it was all about. Kind of got me on that path again.
Was that
community.
big for you to connect with other people because it sounds like a lot of the people in your life who drank weren't having the same experience you had. Like both of your husbands sound like they could drink, take it or leave it. Maybe your father would be an exception where he really did have a drinking problem, it sounds like, but your mom was able to just stop. And, so what was that like for you to be able to sit around for 3 hours a night with people that could truly relate to your experience?
It's just finally that acceptance or that understanding, that someone understands the same feelings that you have, those same thoughts that you have. Because when you're not someone that has addiction issues, it's just really hard to relate to that. And so it's nice to have a connection with someone that
gets you.
That gets it. Yeah.
So you're doing an IOP, you're on Vivitrol, you're being honest with your therapist. What does that entail? I mean, do you go back and relive the trauma? You had religious trauma, you had sexual abuse. Did you finally unpack that baggage with this therapist?
I did, and I still see this therapist to this day once a month. But when I was first seeing her, we were talking twice a week, because I had a lot to unpack. I had a lot of that past stuff I really needed to get through, and I needed to learn how to cope in healthier ways, and I needed to learn how to feel things that I had just numbed for a really long time.
Numbed or ran away from.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you kind of just a la carted your own recovery.
A little bit, kind of took a little bit of everything. I did AA too. Like I said, though, we were in COVID, so people weren't meeting as much, but my community had an outside meeting, and that was good to just see the people in my immediate local area too that were doing it, not just the people on Zoom for the IOP, but actual face-to-face connections. And I did that, every day for the first 5 months too, and that was helpful.
You've talked about your beautiful daughters a couple of times. Did they see the ugliness of your addiction?
Absolutely. My oldest, definitely saw the ugly part of it more, the screaming, the passing out. She was 8 when I got sober, so not too old. I feel really fortunate that they were as young as they were. But yeah, now I cuddle every night. And before I just want to put them to bed so I could have a drink. And now I'm like, are we going to snuggle? Can we read a book and snuggle? And I even asked my 6-year-old, I said, do you remember like a time when we didn't snuggle? And she's like, yeah, right. Like, that's your favorite thing. Like, yeah, no way, so total 180.
That's amazing.
So good.
And how's the relationship with your family?
My same thing, 180. My mom doesn't drink. I have 2 sisters that can also drink normal. My brother is still LDS and he doesn't drink. He's never had. We found out just the other day he's never drank. I was like, wow, good for you.
Yeah.
Like, cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's the outlier.
It's great. So I'm really, really fortunate to have a lot of fantastic support around me. Yeah.
So you piece together your recovery. You find all the right people to help you in it, from therapists to medicine to IOPs to groups, and then you slowly start to gain the trust back of your husband. Did he lose pretty bad trust in you?
Yeah, I don't think that he even realized how much trust he lost until just this last couple months ago. He was able to go on a trip with his buddies. That's the first time he's ever left me alone with our children for more than one night.
Wow.
Ever. And it was just kind of like, wow,
Was he nervous?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
But it took a couple of years.
It took a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because even the girls were like, we keep on forgetting that Dad's not here. I'm like, you got this handled. And I couldn't have done that in the past.
Let me ask you sort of a tougher question.
Uh-oh,
Yeah.
here it comes.
Love it.
So you've had periods of sobriety before, and now you've been sober for a couple of years. This sobriety, granted, looks way different than anything you did before. You're very active, and I hope people are listening to the fact that you know it takes a little bit of work, but you can do it. what is gonna be different about this now?
Yeah.
I mean, what's gonna stop you from going back to drinking?
And to be honest, that can't be the first time you've been asked this question.
Right.
You know, I mean, right?
What's different this time? Why is this different? Yeah. Well, every other time I would say I was doing it for someone else and to prove that I did not have a problem. This time I'm doing it for me, and I accept that I do have a problem.
Perfect answer.
Mic drop, right?
A+.
Yeah.
Well, and I think within what you just said is you decide there was a decision to be honest with your therapist, which might have not seemed like the most important part of what you just said, but to me it was, because when a person decides I'm actually going to be honest about this, and they tell somebody else who is in a position to hold them accountable and help them, that is honestly a turning point. And so, like you said, this is for you, and that's the difference. So,
and now being in it for as long as I have, I can see the beautiful life it provides. There was something about sobriety that I feared. I feared no excitement, no fun. Life was going to be boring, that I wouldn't have any friends, that I couldn't go on vacation, that I couldn't go to a concert. I mean, all these things.
The life would be dull, and what's the point
know I
of doing
could do
that?
them sober.
Yeah.
And now I love to do them sober. I'm there for it. I'm present. I get to remember it. I'm engaged with my kids and seeing them have fun, not like worried about getting my next drink to drown out the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then how does the Instagram page come about?
Good question. I started a business also when I got sober because I needed to fill my time. When, if you're like me, I just drink to fill time too. So I started a spray tanning business, and I was doing Instagram for that, learning how to create graphics and stuff. And I really enjoyed that creative process, using my brain and posting like that. And I was like, hey, this might be a really good accountability for my sobriety, for my recovery. I don't really want to do AA forever. Like, that's not my jam forever. I don't want to have to be at this place for an hour every day, but I'd like to have a daily reprieve somehow. So I thought, I'm going to see if sober Instagram will work. And I just started, in about 120 something days sober, I started posting, and I just started telling my story and saying, this is where I've been. This is where I'm at. If you relate, say, hey. Love to connect, because I did find, like in the IOP, and you were saying those connections were really important to my recovery as well. And so adding the sober Instagram just kind of expanded on that.
So what is your Instagram handle?
Shay Sober, SHAY Sober.
And currently she's got a little over 16,000 followers. And so much the fact that it's turned into a little bit of a moneymaker.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, I know that's not the reason you're doing it, but it's got to give you.
But what does that tell you, Casey? So all of a sudden it's become very popular. What does that tell you?
She's connecting.
Yeah, and that there are a lot of people that, just like Shay, and just like you, that connection. What do we say? What's the opposite of addiction?
It's connection.
Connection, right? It's not, she knows it.
Yeah.
And it's not sobriety per se, it's connection, right?
Yeah.
That's the opposite. And so I'm not surprised with your vivacious, fun, energetic personality that people have gravitated to you for that, but also because people want that connection. They want to feel somebody gets me, somebody understands me. And if you can, provide that in a fun, energetic way, like my pal C-Money over here does. You two are cut from the same cloth. I'm not surprised, and I think it'll probably just continue to expand and grow.
Thank you. Yeah, and I enjoy doing it. So if you can make money at something you enjoy doing, why not?
Right. That's the dream.
So what's next for Shay?
Okay, so I just I enjoyed doing the Instagram so much. I had so many people reaching out to me, saying that it helped, asking for things I did, asking for help, advice, whatever, that I wanted to expand on that. So I just finished the CPSS training through the state of Utah, which is the Certified Peer Support Specialist program. Mm-hmm. In essence, recovery coaching certification. So yeah, I just got that certificate, and I'm hoping to kind of move into recovery coaching and mentorship and support for others that are on this path and just wanting to get healthy.
Can we take a second just to talk about, and I've never even met the man, how amazing your husband is.
Can we? He's honestly the best. Like
13 years.
Yeah.
And the roller
Stuck
coaster,
through.
the roller coaster ride you took him on.
Yeah. Yep.
And so for others are out there who might be in love with an addict, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
we do recover. We can recover.
and
What did, I mean, this is a dumb question sort of because it's so broad, but what's something that he did that helped you get to where you're at?
He stopped enabling and he stopped trying to fix me. That at the end, that was really it. He needed to stop trying to fix
I
me.
bet that was scary for him.
I bet it was so scary for him. And we talk about it a little bit now. He's starting to open up about it. But yeah, when you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
you know what? Let's be honest. Successful people are fixers. You know, people like to fix things. There's a problem, we're going to fix it. And what's more important than your spouse? Probably nothing. And so he wanted to fix you. And when he had to give up and let go of that in order to give you the space.
It's very interesting. And my personality, that was really important too, because I'm kind of the type of person that if someone holds on, I feel a little suffocated and like I have to prove them wrong. So as long as he was holding on, trying to fix me, I was adversely saying, I'm not broken, I'm not broken, I'm not broken. As soon as he let go and was like, I'm just going to let you kill yourself with alcohol if that's what it's going to be then. Like, go ahead, fine, do it. He let go and then I was able to dive deep and look inside.
That resistance went away and the oppositional feeling went away and you were just stuck dealing with yourself. But I think that's scary. I think that's why so many family members have a hard time not enabling and not trying to control and fix the addict because we love them and we want them to get better. But you're right. That's an awesome response that you had to that.
well, I can tell you this. It's been just so much fun having you sit down and tell your story.
Thank you. It's been
Dr.
fun
Matt,
to
any
be
last
here.
thoughts?
Well, I rudely picked up my phone while we were talking, and I started following Shay Sober on Instagram.
So you should go follow Shay Sober on Instagram.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I want more of this energy in my regular life.
That's
So I
kind.
can get it from Instagram.
I love it. So thank you very much for stopping by today.
Thank you guys so much. This has been so fun.
And in case you forgot, Project Recovery is
A KSL podcast.
hip hip.
Sheree!